In this video, I'm going to show you how to make smoked beef brisket burnt ends. And the first thing we're going to do is set our smoker up. We're going to be using our drum smoker today. So we're going to open our lid and take our cooking grate off. And then we're going to take our heat deflector out. Then we're going to fill our charcoal basket up with some lump charcoal or briquettes. And we're using the Bronco Pro today, so I can easily fit 2-3 kilo bags of briquettes in there. And now we want to bury a fire lighter in there and light it up. So we've got enough briquettes in our Bronco Pro to last around 16 hours. This cook definitely isn't going to last that long, but the beauty about that is if we've got any briquettes left over at the end of the cook, we can reuse them in another cook. I'd rather have too much fuel in there than not enough, because if we ran out, it would be a little bit of a pain trying to top it up. And like I said, if we've got too much, we can just use those leftover briquettes in a future cook. And those briquettes are going to take around 10 to 15 minutes to catch light. So while that's happening, we're going to trim and prepare our brisket. And here's our brisket. This is a beautiful 3.2 kilo point end brisket. And I'm going to get started by taking any excess fat and silver skin off. So just on the top here, you can see this section of fat is quite thick. So we're just going to get our knife and trim that down. Don't chuck any of your trimmings away. Any fat I'm going to keep in one pile, and then any leaner sort of meat we trim off, I'll keep in another pile. The fat we can render down for beef tallow, and the meat we can keep for burger mince. I'm just going to rotate that slightly, and we almost want to scoop some fat out of that section there. And that's looking pretty good. We'll just hit it a little bit more in this section, and then just feel around for any thicker pockets of fat. I can feel that this section here is quite thick, so we're just going to trim that down. A little bit over on the edge here as well, and then I'm just going to square up this thinner end, and then I'll square up this thin edge as well. And for an example, this piece here, absolutely perfect for burger mince. And now I'm happy with this top section. We're going to flip it over and get started on the bottom. Now this already looks like it doesn't need too much trimming. We're just going to get rid of a little bit of excess fat on the bottom here. The rest of that there is quite thin. So a little bit thick in here, and you're always going to get a big pocket of fat through here because this is where the point and the flat meets. And just a little bit of silver skin over here. And this brisket is now ready to be seasoned. We've trimmed a couple of 100 grams off there. The starting weight of this brisket was around 3.2 kilos. I reckon this one will weigh around 3 kilos now. And now our brisket's all trimmed up. I'm going to go ahead and season it. I'm going to be using some of my beef bounce rub. First, I'm going to hit it with some yellow mustard just to help our rub stick to the meat. So just a light coat all over our brisket, and then we'll give our brisket a nice, even and generous coverage in our beef bounce. And we're going to pat that in as we go. We want to make sure we get our edges. We'll flip it over and do the top. And feel free to use any of your favorite brisket rubs, or a bit of salt, pepper, garlic always does the trick as well. And then we'll just mop up any excess seasoning we got on our cutting board. And don't forget, beef bounce and our entire range of rubs and barbecue sauce, as well as the Oklahoma Joe's smokers, are available on our website. And now our brisket is good to go once our smoker's ready. And now our briquettes are burning nicely. We can shut our lid, and then we want to open up both of our vents. And now we're going to bring our drum smoker up to temperature. For this cook, I'm going to look to hold it at around 275 Fahrenheit or 135 Celsius. I reckon it's going to take around 10 to 15 minutes to get up to temperature. And now our smoker's up to temperature, we can get this brisket on. But first I'll get some smoking wood on. I'm going to go with some cherry chunks. I'll get one straight on the fire, and then another one just off to the side. And we can get our heat deflector back in, followed by our cooking grate, and then our brisket. And then I've also got a little pot with some of that fat we trimmed off the brisket. I'm going to put that just up the front there, and that's going to render down over the next few hours. And now our brisket's on, we're just going to let that go for 2 to 3 hours until it develops a really nice bark. So all I'm really going to have to worry about in the first hour of this cook is some fire management. Fire management is super easy in a drum smoker, but for now, we're going to let this brisket go, and we'll check back in once we're a bit further into this cook. All right, our brisket's been smoking away unwrapped for around 3 hours now. Let's check it out. Just before we open it up, as you can see, we're holding perfectly around that 275 Fahrenheit or 135 Celsius. That's how I've got our intake vent set. I've left the top one open as I normally do, and if I've needed to increase temperature, all I've got to do is open it up a little bit. If I need to decrease, I'll just shut it down a little bit. But this is sitting beautifully right about there. And now we can check on our brisket. Now this is looking and smelling amazing. We've got a lot of fat that's starting to render out the top. Our bark is set on there nicely. None's coming off on my finger. We're going to have a check of the internal right in that thickest part. And we're right around 185 Fahrenheit or 85 degrees Celsius. So we're going to close our lid for a moment while we get ready to wrap this up. All right, so I've got 3 layers of good quality foil here. And now I'm just going to open our smoker up. We're going to get our rendered fat just there. And we're going to lay our brisket down, pour that rendered fat over our brisket, and we'll wrap this up nice and tight. Then we'll get it back in the smoker, then we'll shut our lid and let that keep going. Now there's a few different ways you can make brisket burnt ends. You could have cubed the brisket up from the start, smoked it for a couple of hours, and then wrapped it up in a foil tray with some butter and sauce. Or you can follow along to this video where I'm smoking the brisket as a whole piece. I've given that a few hours unwrapped, and now we've wrapped it up. I'm just going to take it until it's probing tender around that 205 Fahrenheit or 96 degrees Celsius internal mark. Once it's probing tender, I'm going to give it a short rest before we cube it up and finish it off in the sauce. And that way, once this brisket's done, I've got the option to have some nice savoury slices, and then I can do some sweet burnt ends as well. So like I said, there's a few different ways you can do them, so I suggest trying a few different methods and finding what works for you. But for now, I'm going to continue to let this brisket cook away, and we'll check for probe tenderness once it's been wrapped up for an hour. Alright, and we've been wrapped up for a little over an hour, so I'm just going to check our internal temperature. That is actually probing quite soft, right around that 205 Fahrenheit or 96 degrees Celsius. Just going to open our foil up so we can have a good probe around, because we want to make sure we're getting right in that thickest part. We are right where we want to be. That's nice and tender, especially over on this thinner side, which is actually feeling really nice all over. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift this out nice and careful, and I'm going to get that down on our workstation. And we just want to let that steam off so it stops that cooking process and doesn't overcook that meat. Then we're going to give it a short 15 to 20 minutes rest before we cube it up. Alright, and after a short rest, our brisket is looking really good. Just have a look at the wobble on that. Take a nice thick chunk off the end here. And that is looking amazing, nice and juicy, even on that end piece. I'm just going to cube that into nice thick chunks. And just remember, I'm dealing with the point end here, so I've actually turned our brisket. If I had a whole brisket, let's say that's our point end, and that's our flat side, I'd be slicing this way, and then because we've got the point muscle coming over here, that's when I always turn, and you want to slice the point muscle the other way as I'm slicing now. I'm just going to keep slicing this into nice even cubes. That just looks so good. Got a nice little smoke ring on there as well. I'll start moving some of these into the tray as well. And because we don't have much of that point muscle left, I'm just going to knock that off like so. You just want to follow that fat seam that goes between the point and the flat. And then if you wanted to, you could turn your flat back around and get a few slices like so. I'm just going to take a few slices to snack on, and then I'm going to cube the rest up. Typically your point end will go for the burnt ends, but this is a good quality brisket, and these flat pieces will be just fine. And then with our brisket cubes, you just want to get some of your favorite barbecue sauce in there. I'm going to be using some of my Hookshot whiskey and jalapeno barbecue sauce. I'm going to pour some of those wrap juices back in as well, and then we'll give those a gentle but good mix, and then we'll get this tray in the smoker. I want that sauce to tack up. We'll give it around 15 to 20 minutes, and we'll give it a mix halfway through as well. Right, so it's been 10 minutes. Just going to give them a little mix. These are looking really good, but I'm just going to give them another 5 or 10 minutes. So we'll shut that lid, and I'll let them go for just a little bit longer. All right, and these are now ready to come out. Just have a look at them. I'll just let those cool off for a moment before we try one. Well, there you have it. There's how to make some smoked beef brisket burnt ends. If you've got any questions, don't hesitate to ask them in the comments below. I'll put everything you need to know down in the video description. While you're there, subscribe to our channel. Really helps us out. Like the video as well, but for now, that's the end. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.